to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Clerk, if you could please call the roll.
Mr. Glasbach?
Here.
Mrs. Hildebrand? Here. Mrs. Hoskins? Here. Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mr. Mather?
Here.
Mrs. Schott?
Here.
Joe Bento?
Here.
And Etchells? Here.
Thank you. And if you could call the calendar.
Tuesday, December 10th, there'll be a school committee business meeting. Wednesday, December 11th at 3:30 here in the administration building will be a health and wellness subcommittee meeting. And Monday, December 16th, there will be a joint meeting with the town council.
And at this time, with unanimous consent, I'd like to sort of take something out of order here. And let me just find where I'm at. Which is, and I'd ask if, I'm going to make a motion, as long as no one objects to me doing it out of order with unanimous consent, I'm going to make a motion to table item H, which is the RFP for Davisville Academy. I'm going to table it for this meeting.
Second.
I have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
So we're going to table that. So next item on our agenda is going to be presentations and recognitions. First one is the academic achievement presentation.
It looks like they put it out of order, which I'm fine with.
Oh,
because it's
okay.
a lot shorter.
Okay.
If you want to do it that way.
So whichever, it doesn't matter to me which
Yeah.
one we do first, so.
Yeah. Brian, do you want to do that one first? That way it's a lot shorter.
The ILP?
Yeah, does that say?
Oh,
Oh, I'm
they're both up
sorry.
there.
No, they're both up
Oh, I thought mine wasn't up there yet.
Go right ahead.
All right,
All right, you good to go?
if you
Okay.
don't mind, I didn't know it's long. All right.
Mr. Lally will be happy to
Anything you need.
Wickford Middle School
All I
did
saw
very
was
well.
on the left.
Those RICAS
You are a
scores,
tough
so-
act to follow.
Oh dear, I don't think so. I'm turning to stone after 45, but let's see. Okay. All right, good evening, everybody. I don't know who heard me or who didn't hear me. I'm Denise Mancier, and Assistant Superintendent for North Kingstown. And normally, when I'm giving a presentation, there's nobody in any seats. So it's really great that we have so many people here tonight. Back on October 22nd, we had our RICAS assessment. They were released. And so I was prepared to come tonight and talk to you a little bit about where we stood, North Kingstown stands with the RICAS assessment. And then lo and behold, a couple weeks later, they released our accountability this past Thursday. So all the schools now have their accountability and where they stand from last year, and that's a star rating. If you're not familiar with that, I'll be going over that as well. And then also, they released our science scores. So that's a lot to bundle up into one presentation, but we're going to do that tonight because next month we have a lot of stuff coming up, so I'll do my best. This will go up onto my website afterwards, so if anybody, if it goes too quickly tonight, and if you have additional questions, feel free, you can email my office. I'd be happy to go over
It'll
anything
be on the front
additional.
page of the district
I know, it'll
website
be
as
on the
well.
front page. Thank you, Dr. Ojad. So before I begin, I do want to say the State of North Kingstown School Department and our schools, I think, is we're in a great place. And we have very dedicated teachers. We have students that want to learn. We have staff members that are happy to be here. And we always have room to grow. Everybody always has room to grow. And you're going to see here, there are some areas that we do better than others, and I feel like what we end up doing is forecasting that and making sure that we have all our ducks in a row to address anything that we need to address. So with that, I'll begin. So a little bit of background, the second year of implementation, it's administered in grades 3 through 8, and the SAT is at the high school in grade 11. This came from RI when they released the information. They wanted to make sure that we understood back in 2015 when we started with the park. The second year there was a little bump, and the same thing happened to us this year. You can see over on the right-hand side, it shows that there's a little bit of bump. So the commissioner wants everybody to realize that there's no trend line yet, that the second year you get to know your test a little bit better. The students know how to take it. And so, yeah, that's really it about that. But I do like to say I'd rather see the line moving up than moving down. So I'll go from there. And I'll take a minute of that. So the overall state summary, over 90% participation in ELA and math throughout the state in grades 3 through 8. Oh, there's a typical bump, and a similar thing happened with Park. Keep going. So for North Kingstown, the overall summary, well, Rhode Island went up to 38 from 34, and North Kingstown is at 59.7 for ELA, or 60, up from 54 last year. And then also in math, Rhode Island went to 30, up from 27, and at North Kingstown, it's 50.7, 51, up from 47.
And then just quick, that's meeting expectations, right? The what? Oh, that's participation.
No, this is the percentage.
Meeting or exceeding.
Meeting or
proficiency.
okay.
Yes, I'm sorry, yes.
Okay.
medium.
3 or 4.
Yes, a 3 or a 4.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
That's what I thought.
So North Kingstown had some district distinctions. The 5th highest district in the state for ELA and all K through 8 districts, and the 4th highest district in the state for math, K through 8 districts. I'm sorry, but I'm kind of annoyed. All right. And then for the high school, the 3rd highest scale score in the state, ELA and math for SAT in K through 12 districts. So some school distinctions. Hamilton Elementary School, the highest performing elementary school in the state for ELA, and the 2nd highest for math. Wickford Middle School, 2nd highest performing middle school in the state in both ELA and math. That's for public and non-charter schools. All right, so we have district level and state results. Again, I'm trying to show it in a couple different ways, graphs, writing, chart. So right there you can see all for ELA. All of our schools 59.7. Again, the state was 38. And then math, all 50.7% versus state 30%. All right, and there's the percentage of students that met or exceeded expectations receiving a 3 or a 4. Okay. This is just at the RIDE website. There's a lot of information. So if anybody goes to the RIDE, you're actually given quite a bit of information, whether you're a parent or a student. And this is just one of the sheets that they sent out, and it's the top part of it. But I'm just going to move over here if you don't mind. So basically, there's scale scores. There's 1, 2, 3, and a 4, and you'll see it's from 440 to 560, and it talks about not meeting expectation, partially meeting expectation, and this year there were materials that were sent out to parents as well. You could download something so that if your child received a 1 or a 2, what was your best course of action? What should you do? You should talk to the principal, talk to the guidance counselors, make a meeting, things like that. And then if you're meeting expectation, your child is on grade expectation, and if you're exceeding, there's mastery involved. All right. So there is a detailed sheet that will be going home. They've put it in different languages this year. There's quite a bit of information, and I want to make sure, again, on our website, we'll put a link so that people know where to go to find this information. So here's our first of many charts, but this is our 2019 RICAS ELA percent of students who met or exceeded expectation versus the state. So the state is in the blue, and and North Kingstown is the orange, and you can see grades 3 on the far left, all the way over to grade 8 on the right, and there's, they're in this grade 3 is a 48. That's about the highest it goes. And then I'd like to point out grade 5 is at a 66, and I don't know, I just like to look at that slide because I really feel like we're doing a nice job here in North Kingstown. I know there's a lot of different districts in the state need different things, but I feel like if we keep taking a look at these slides, you'll see. So the RICAS ELA comparison, again, we can't just compare to the whole state of Rhode Island. We need to look at ourselves and see what we're doing year to year. So I would like to remark that we've done a great job. It looks like we're doing really well, and it looks like right here we have a little bit of work to do to try to figure out. It's nice to, bathe in what's going well. We also need to make sure we're taking a look at where we might have fallen a little bit and find out and drill down. And I will say that the minute the results come out, the principals, the teachers, they're all on the website, and you can go and you can ask to go down to your very down to the students in your classroom. And there have been data meetings already at the elementary schools. Principals have sent me information. And now there's going to be continued meetings in the beginning of December, not only obviously for the RICAS, but also looking at the accountability and where it's going to be coming up, and for science. So, and that's also while you're trying to teach your children that are in front of you every day and making sure that you're keeping up with all the standards that you need to do for this year. So while we're going back and taking a look at our children from last year, at the same time they're in every single day working with the children. So there's not enough hours in the day. It's basically it. So again, I put this chart. The reason I have here now, this would be like 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so the blue part is the 1, and that right over here is the state average. And I put this here because I want you to know that the students, although not every student gets a 3 or a 4, we are really working hard to make sure that the students that are the neediest are getting out of the bottom and working their way up. And so again, we have ways to go, but I do feel like it gets smaller every year, the amount of the lower. And now we turn to mathematics. Same thing, the state average is in the blue, the North Kingstown average is in the red, and again, we have, we went up just a little bit on each area, but I do feel like at each school level, at each grade level, there are teachers that are really drilling down onto their data, looking at the released items, and taking a look at what area of the standards that we need to work on. At the same time, they're increasing the scores every year and the growth. And then here it is, 2018 to 2019. Again, the 2018 is the blue, and the 2019 is in the red, and we're either. That's grade 3. That kind of stayed the same, but everywhere else we are moving up. And so there's nowhere that it went down. So that's good news. Everybody good so far? All right. And then we have, again, 1 through 4 performance in mathematics. That's just another, I just want to make sure I'm doing this. Okay, so subgroup performance. It's improved, but the gaps do persist. So there's a lot of different subgroups, and our new commissioner is really keeping an eye on it. And I will say that North Kingstown was always keeping an eye on it. Our teachers and our students and the principals have been keeping an eye on this. And I will say, if you take a look over here, we have the NK average, and then from 18 to 19, and you'll see the female and the males. And right here is the differently abled, students with IEPs, low income, homeless, and English language learners. Last year there wasn't a big enough population to even make the map. All right, so this year it's gone up. So if you can take a look at that, and you can see that we definitely have some work to do here. And this is very, it mirrors the state. But I would say that North Kingstown, the growth we're doing very well in the growth in these areas. And the same thing here for math. The male and the female about the same here. And then you have students with disabilities, low income, homeless, and English language learners. All are going either steady or increasing. We also have English language arts performance by race and ethnicity. All right, and it goes anywhere. Sometimes we don't have any of the population, American Indians. If you see a blank here, it's because we didn't have an N number large enough to be reported. All right. And then the same thing with mathematics. So we're improving, and we're continuing to work on that. So the SAT results, ELA literacy and math. So 2018 is to the left of each one, and 2019 North Kingstown is in this like pale yellow, and the state is below. So we went from 81 to 82 in ELA, and 60 to 62 in math. I'm very, very happy with those scores for the high school. I feel like we have a math person here. Congratulations, Jordan. And then for the state, 50 to 51 and 30 to 32. So again, they're increasing a little bit, as are we. The SAT, now this is the second year, we do get the results back. They have some released items. We don't get every every question. But again, John Boucher in the math department at the high school, and also Michelle in the English department, they have common planning time. They sit down, they work with the questions, they figure out the different bands where they need to take a look at it. The students are, and it's not just that they're looking at the test, it's the rigor of the actual curriculum in the classroom that it is getting the students that is ready for this test when it comes through. And I think those are really amazing percentages to see.
Just clarification,
Mhm.
so that's the quote-unquote free test in grade 11? Right?
Yes, that's not a Saturday or anything like that.
Taken in the fall or
No.
in the spring?
In the spring.
So spring of their
They moved-
junior year.
Spring of their junior year. Yes. So the Saturday reports, we don't count, they're not counted.
I'd also like to just make a note about, can you go back to that last slide?
Yes.
So the ELA, the proficiency score is significantly higher, but in comparison to the state, math is actually, about, so much more in comparison to
The rest of the state.
North Kingstown to the state score. So I just want to give a shout out to those math teachers out there who are working so hard.
Oh, yeah. I think
There's,
that's
it is a significant, there's more of a significant increase from the state score for North Kingstown math than there is for ELA, even though the ELA percentage is higher. So there's something to celebrate with both of them.
I 100% agree with that. And I'm sorry if you think I took that for granted because
No, I'm
I
not saying
literally,
that. I just-
the math is always seems to be a little bit
Point.
lower, but I think that is amazing. Those are amazing scores, and those are basically equate to like a 3 or a 4. Same thing.
What's the actual proficiency number in the SAT here, do you know, for each one? Like what?
Oh, the scale. Oh, the cut score.
What's the cut score, like, to be
Hold on, let
proficient?
me see if it's
So
next.
82% got above,
Hold on. Right here. No, I'm sorry, I'm back at RICAS. I don't. Do you know off the top of your head what it is? I can get it for you. I don't have it on
I can
this.
probably look it up too. One more time?
I think it's 480 and 530.
480
It's higher in
math,
math than
oh,
it is
higher
in
in math, 480, 530, okay. I was just
I'll
curious.
double check this one.
Yeah, I can look it up, don't worry, I just thought if you had it.
No, I wish I had it off the top of my head for you, Sally. I just.
I'm
It's
just
gone.
trying to throw
It's
it.
gone. All right, so back to RICAS. Again, this is one of the reports that will go out to the parents. This is just a blank shell. As the parents get their scores, everything is filled in for them to take a look, to share with the family, and to basically try to figure out how these all these tests are equating to what's going on. So they have an area where it talks about the achievement and then the student growth. And so we sent those out, I want to say, last week. Thank you. So that came home.
Denise, with that, with the RICAS reporting, if parents get them and their children either didn't move up or actually moved down or are in that sort of yellow 2 area,
Yeah.
are they being flagged by the district or?
Oh, absolutely, yes. And what ends up happening is well, the district isn't necessarily flagging, but within each school, there are data teams. And so what they're doing is they're taking a look at the scores, where they are, and each teacher, even though they were in the teacher last year, but the new teacher that has them has access to all that data. And then there's data teams that are working on like, okay, what do we do now? What's the next step? And so if a parent is not sure what to do, then that's when we said you give the principal a call, or if you're at the middle school, the high school, most likely you talk to a guidance counselor, and then we can work on getting a meeting together with the team or the teachers, and to try to figure out. Because if I have time, I'm not sure if I'm going to have time, but if I did have time, a little extra time, I could take you to the website, and it does show you like the released items, and parents actually have access to these items as well. So for the RICAS, for the science, we don't have that yet, but for the RICAS, you can go on there, and if you see that your child is deficit, and let's say in a reading, one of the reading standards, you can look to see which item is there that represents that, and you can take a look at that. And some parents, they're not interested, but other parents are very interested. So depending on where you stand in there, you can work with the school, you can work on something at home. There's a lot of different ways to make sure that we can come at this. All right?
Thank you.
You're welcome. So then there's student growth information, and a student growth percentile describes a student's learning over time compared with his or her academic peers. only grades 4 through 8. So if a student's in grade 3 and they just started this year, they won't have a growth goal yet, but they start in grade 4. And so that's a really important score, and I really like to highlight this because if you feel like your child, if your child's a little bit below, and then you notice their growth score, though, is really high, that means they are learning faster and more in that same amount of time. So you definitely want to take a look at the growth goal. And if you have a child that's always really high, and you see that the growth goal is kind of low, they could just be like, getting by, so you want to make sure that everybody, whether they're high or low, is getting an increased growth goal. That's a really important thing to be looking at. So the next steps and resources, again, this is going to be there's a web page for educator and parents to go to for item analysis, and this takes you there. When I only had to do RICAS, I was going to do a whole thing on RIDE, but because I have to talk about accountability and I also have to talk about science, for the sake of time, I'm going to keep going. All right, but on the website, if you click on that, it takes you right to an area where you just make a copy of, it's a Google Doc, and it'll show you the items. And then right at the bottom, this is what I've been talking about, school data teams and teachers have met and will continue to meet to review the school scores and adjust as needed. The elementary schools do it a little differently than the high school. The high school does it by department, usually led on common planning time with the department chair leading it. And the elementary schools have data teams, and they work as they can because they're with the kids all day long. So they have to make sure they can make time for that. All right, so we're going to move, just going to pivot just a little bit to science. Yeah.
Just real quick,
Yes.
before we pivot to science.
Okay.
I don't want us to underestimate or gloss over the male-female ELA difference. It's in North Kingstown, it's in Barrington, it's in East Greenwich, it's in the state, it's in charters, it's in every single school district.
Joe,
It's,
what do you have to say about that?
wow.
And I don't want to lose the point.
No, I won't.
Which is to say we're making growth, heart, kneecap, RICAS. It
Right.
exists, it's prevalent. I don't understand why this governor thinks we're ever going to get to 75% reading proficiency when half of a population systematically lags behind another 50%. And I wish the state would take it on and not ignore it.
So, yeah, and there's got to be that grounded in some research. And I don't know what happens at the college level. Do they
Well, I guess I raised that
persist?
because I saw RIDE appointed these literacy ambassadors. There's someone from URI, there's someone from RIC. I would hope that somebody would include them. I know dyslexia is one of their things. That's important. But so is the fact half of our student population is lagging behind the other. And it's not income-based, it's not race-based, it's not school location-based, it's not type of school-based. Something that's pervasive should be something that the state should be looking at. Which I know is not necessarily your issue, per se, but
It looks
I'm
like
just
it's going to
hoping-
become my issue now.
But I'm just hoping that there's enough groundswell support that we've had two commissioners who have chosen to put their head in the sand when they talk about improving test scores. So I hope with a new commissioner, we're more opening to looking at what something 3 different assessments have told us. So.
I appreciate that. I do appreciate it. And as far as the dyslexia, there was I think it was a July 2016 article in the Providence Journal about the dyslexia and what they're doing, and they've not given a dime towards that money, towards that issue either. So it's another very important issue, and it's brought up, and there might be a representative, but there's nothing that's been given to us regarding that. All the work that we do on any of that is anything that the North Kingstown School Department has decided to do. So it's very disappointing and in multiple areas. All right, the history behind the NGSA. So just quickly, because that yellow is pretty tough to see, but in 2013 we adopted the Next Generation Science Standards, and then we followed that in 2017. That was the last administration of the kneecap science test. Last year we had a field test for the Next Generation Science Assessment, and this year is the actual first administration of our Next Generation Science Assessment. Okay, so we do it in 3 grades, 5th grade, 8th grade, and 11th. It assesses life sciences, physical sciences, and earth and space sciences. Computer-based tests that includes item clusters, which are similar to performance, task, and standalone items. And then all items ask students to use science and engineering practices and apply their understanding of disciplinary core ideas and cross-cutting concepts to make sense out of real-world phenomena. And going from elementary to grade 8, we also partner with URI and the GEMSNet FOSS kits, and I just feel like the students are very well prepared going through that. And we have a big professional development for all of our teachers that do that. So in Rhode Island, this is from a RIDE webinar that I just listened to on Thursday. So I'm hearing it pretty new, just like all of you, but it shows the performance by grade. The totals at the top, then there's the 11th grade, then followed by the 8th grade, and the 5th is at the very bottom. So you can see the meeting and exceeding on the far right. And I'm going to keep going on from there, but it's basically the total is 31.2% meeting and exceeding. All right, their 11th grade is 30.5. So take a look, the North Kingstown NGSA chart overview. Again, the state was at 31, and then I have Fishing Cove, Forest Park, Hamilton, and Quinnesset and Stony Lane. Those are our elementary schools. You'll see their scores next to it. It's a very large range, from 23 up to 65. And then DMS and WMS, 54 and 64, followed by the high school at 61. So we have not been able to really dig into any of this data yet. So we will be able to do that, and I can answer questions after that. This is a very preliminary overview. Again, there's a next, I can't even click on that because if I were to click on that, it would tell you it wasn't there yet. They do have a PDF out that tells you how to read the chart, but it's going to be very similar to what's out there already. And they will be meeting in December regarding, nobody has met yet for the science. It's just brand new coming out. Okay, so back to the science, because does anybody have?
So those scores haven't been sent to parents yet?
No, those were embargoed,
Okay.
and then we're gonna be sending them. The RICAS went out.
Yep.
They actually did send us the science, and then we had to pull everything because they hadn't put the results out yet. So
Yep.
they will be coming out. If you haven't seen, that's why.
In previous years, the rollout of scores has been more sporadic. There's been months between, different tests. In this case, we had this presentation put together, and just last week, the accountability, which we're going to go to next, and the science both came out. So we're kind of throwing that all in because we're doing the presentation tonight, but some pieces of this we've been able to review them much more in depth than others. So.
Okay. So on to accountability. So I took this because it's used quite often. Things that matter, things you can control, and then what you should focus on. I really felt like it was a perfect picture for accountability because the metrics in this system keep moving, and it's, I feel like I'm on ice skates trying to follow them. So we'll continue on. Again, the North Kingstown school system in and of itself is one of the best systems I think we have in the state. My children went through the system. My son's a senior right now. They both went through DMS, and if I had to do it again, I would send them to the same school. There's phenomenal teachers that work there. They took care of my children, and my kids were very ready to go to school. So I want to say that because this is not as easy to look at like a TripAdvisor score, like I'm going to stay in a hotel. I know it's put into a star system so that it's something that people can relate to, but as the accountability system rolls out for the second year, there are things that have been going on behind the scenes that you need to keep up with, and we are working our data administrator, who, for those of you that know her, Sherry Briggs, works tirelessly throughout the year to make sure that we are sending data up to RIDE so that it can be accountable. We've put in some information because we feel like having some static data from a year or 2 years ago that we can't do anything about doesn't help. So what we've asked is we've asked it to make it fluid and dynamic so that if we do a quarterly, something like that, we can take a look at stuff, gather people together, and make sure that we can make adjustments. So overall, if you take a look at, I have a couple of schools starred there with the red asterisks because Hamilton and Wickford retain their 5 stars. So I'm so proud of the teachers and students there. They did a great job. And then Stony Lane has an asterisk there. This is a super feat. They had a 3 last year, and they worked diligently on 3 different areas, which I'll be showing you, and they moved up. So,
I could just
yes.
make one correction in that. Hamilton actually last year was a 4-star school.
Oh, I'm
That-
so
which-
sorry.
Which really speaks to the complexity of this data. Last year, Hamilton was the 2nd highest performing elementary school in the state of Rhode Island, and they were a 4-star school. So it goes to show you all of the subcategories have to come in just right. And so you could have, you know, school-wide a really high performance, but one subcategory can really affect that score. So it's in some respects, the star rating thing is a little oversimplified. You have to dig into, and I encourage, you know, as people are watching tonight,
Dig in.
please look at your school in detail. You're going to see a lot of things that you really like. There are some things we need to work on, no doubt about it, but those are some very good scores, including at Davisville Middle School, by the way.
Absolutely. And on the right-hand side, what the reason right there is RIDE gives you one reason for your accountability of why you really either moved or didn't move, what ended up happening. So those were the reasons that were given to us on the right-hand side for each school's score. And you know, obviously my heart goes out to North Kingstown High School. Everybody here knows I was the principal there last year. And just to look at the Diploma Plus program, it's not even about achievement and growth. We moved down. So,
Well, I think,
yeah.
you know, Dr. O'Shea's point shouldn't just be glossed over. Davisville Middle, that ELL population is, what, 3% of the school? So 3%, 24 kids, is determining the star rating for 500 kids. That, I think, is a problem the state needs to fix. I think it's super important to highlight if subgroups are underperforming, absolutely. But to say 4% of the kids determine the rating for the other 96, to me, is a gross simplification that we're trying to tell parents if the stars mean something, it really doesn't mean necessarily what the stars are saying. I mean, 5 stars, yes. But anything below 5 stars, you have to look at that chart, which is not really obvious for most people at first glance. And second of all, then you have to dig behind, which RIDE makes the data almost impossible to do. So again, I just say, good idea. I wish the people who come up with these ideas would go back and maybe talk to parents and go, what do you actually want to know about your school? Because saying Davisville Middle is a 2-star school is a gross simplification and a real misrepresentation of what's going on in that school.
Thank you. I agree. So right here, moving on to Stony Lane. So we have 2 charts here. The top one is about last year, and you can see the bottom chart got a little bit bigger because they included an extra category in here. And really, you're only as good as your lowest score. So because last year there was a little, they got a 3-star on the achievement and the growth area, that brought them down to a 3-star. This year they worked on, their achievement went from a 3 to a 4, their growth went from a 3 to a 5, and their low performing subgroups went from a 4 to a 5. So you can see how, what they worked on, and they were very specific, and it worked out for them. So now they're a 4-star school, and I would go to, again, I would send any of my students there. I would send any of my children there. So if you're looking only at stars and you only want to be at a 5-star school, that isn't necessarily, but I can't believe the work that the team did over there and the results that they had. sometimes it works out for you because again, they have their N number for subgroups, for ELL population is such that it doesn't matter. It doesn't count for this particular school. If you see something here where it doesn't have a circle, that means the N number, oops, I'm sorry.
You're still on Stony. You're talking about DMS, but you're still on Stony.
I'm on Stony. I'm on Stony.
Okay.
I know I'm on Stony,
Right.
but I'm letting them know. I don't know what I just did there, but those three things, because they don't have a circle in it, means their N number is too small. So that's why. Am I going to have that there now the whole time, or when I go forward, will it go away? You ready? Will it go there?
Just go forward.
Oh no, it didn't. It got away. Okay. All right. So here's the accountability chart. This is one of the things that did not count last year. I made a nice big sticker there so you could see it. Was a Diploma Plus. That's new for 2019, and that's why the accountability chart's a little bit bigger than it was last year. Just wanted to make sure. And the Diploma Plus, there's two different areas for it. It only counts for the high school level, and it talks about your children, the children in the high school. Are they taking AP? Are they taking CTE courses? Are they taking AP, CTE, an ACN, Advanced Coursework Network, where you can go get transcripted credits to take with you to college. And it also has the IB, but we do AP instead of IB.
Right, but Denise, it's not just they're taking the AP class, they're taking the AP exam.
Exam,
Which
credentials.
is an important point, because you don't need to take the exam to pass the course or get credit. And we can't make kids take the exam because there's a cost to that, which essentially, again, the folks at RIDE putting a credential that mandates parents pay, which we can't ask them to do, which they don't know that it's important other than their own thing, which again puts it back on the district to say, I guess we should just pay for every kid's AP exam because we get penalized if they don't take it. It's just, I lose my mind that the people at RIDE don't talk more to the people on the ground and the staff, the teachers who have to implement this stuff. Because essentially what it says to me is, we need to pay for every kid's AP exam at the high school.
Sure.
The state also canceled their contribution towards students who take AP exams
That are free reduced lunch. Yes. Again, the whole point is to get those students, right? We want to advance them to be college and career ready, and we penalize on one hand, and on the other hand, we penalize you for not doing something we disincentivized you. It's just crazy.
So to piggyback on that sentiment, so as Dr. Mansieri mentioned, this is a new category for this year, and some of the data there is old. I was very surprised to see that we didn't meet the threshold for Diploma Plus, because we have a incredible Diploma Plus kind of high school. Many of our kids, more than most districts in the state, take AP coursework and even take the test and do well on the test.
Yep.
Many take the Advanced Course Network, and many participate in Career and Tech.
Yes.
What they did not have on this was the Career and Tech credential, so that end of course exam necessarily, and this is data from 2 years?
2018.
Yeah, 2018. So as we get further into Career and Tech, we're only in our third or fourth year now, so there are going to be more people taking those end of course exams for Career and Tech. That's going to be more points. To get to a 5-star rating for North Kingstown High School, that area needed to be a score of 75. We had a score of 72. So that's how close North Kingstown High School is to a 5-star school. So I'm feeling very good about the future. We have a tremendous career and tech program, and a lot of students are loving it and doing very well in it. So I see that number continuing to grow.
Yeah, we're 5 across the board except for that area.
Right.
Okay. So I think you did a great job explaining that, Dr. Ojay. I'm going to keep moving.
I didn't mean to steal your thunder.
No,
I'm
I'm happy sharing the floor. Happy sharing the floor. Okay, so this, you don't really need this because Dr. Ojay just explained it, but if you go to the website and you go to any one of these charts and you hover over how did you get the score, this will appear. And so it talks about AP credit, college credit, CTE credit, credential bundle, and IB. So we get 0 points for the CTE credential bundle. And it goes to 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade. If you're taking the classes at the very end, did you take and pass the Project Lead the Way exam? And so that's what happens. They took some, they didn't take all. So at the very bottom it says some CTE credentials must be grouped together to count based on the CTE board standards, which are out now this year. So and again, for 2019, those students already graduated, there's nothing we can do, so we're working on the 2020 population. But in 2019, we had some, or this year we have students that are going to be graduating, and last year we had students that are going to be graduating in the, not only in the in robotics area, engineering, but in the business finance area. And those students are right across the board getting their credentials. Okay. So Davisville Middle School, I really felt compelled to take a moment to talk about Davisville because, again, this is the English language proficiency right here. They were a 3-star school. This year they had their end number went up high enough so that, and also Bob Jones just talked about it a moment ago, they have a number of students that are ELL, and for whatever reason, they didn't make the achievement, the proficiency score. So when it comes down, when they were figuring it out, we got 1 point. Because if you get 2 points, you see it would go up to a 4-star. So because it was 1 point there, that's how far down the school went. But everything else you can see is in either the 5, the 4, or the 3. So if we take a look, I did go another step further with this, and I talked about, again, growth. Because one of the things that we pride ourselves on is that the students are moving, the needle is moving, and the students are working really hard. And so if you take a look at the DMS math growth, and you look at the subgroups that are over here, you see that the English language learners, okay, this year for the 2019 and for the 2018, they had no ELL student had low growth over the past 2 years in math. All right, so, so they're right here, and they're growing. See, everybody's growing. All these subgroups are working really hard. They're growing. And then if you go ahead and you take a look, and you're like, all right, well, how are they doing on ELA? All right. Now, remember, they're English language learners, so maybe they're not proficient, so to speak, in the actual reading, that moment of the test, like somebody else that grew up in the United States. But if you take a look right now, and you take it to English learners over here, and you'll see they're 1.09. They are the leading subgroup in ELA growth at DMS. So there's some major, teaching going on, good things happening. And so I really feel like the growth is where you need to look, and then they're going to get there. And I will say also this year was brought to our attention by the English language teachers in our district that we had a larger population. And I brought that to the superintendent and to the school committee, and we were supported in bringing in a 5th ELL teacher. So I want to acknowledge North Kingstown for making sure that we put our money where our mouth is. So as a district, what's in place? English language learners, additional teacher, drilling down the data, researching best practices. We have a math curriculum, Bridges from K to 5. We're in grade 3 this year as far as professional learning and rollout. Grade 4 next year. At the high school, the CTE graduates will definitely increase. We can only increase. We have a large number there. The high school and district is working with the RI data team. I talked to you a little bit about that on metrics, asking for cohort data to be dynamic and quarterly updates versus just being one static number at the end of the year. And then also, I am on a high quality curriculum along with the principal at DMS and principal at Quinnesset, and also reading specialist from the middle school to look at a high quality curriculum for ELA and from K through 8, and that is for this school year. And so the school committee, this is not obviously the last you've heard of me because they're going to be talking about curriculum coming up, but we're researching this Thursday. We're going to be talking to the people from Ed Reports, and for those of you that don't know what Ed Reports is, for lack of a better way of explaining it, when you're going to buy a washer or a dryer and you go to Consumer Reports and they tell you like what's the best one to buy. Well, Ed Reports takes a look at curriculum that's out there right now, and they look at the standards and how well and the resources that come with the curriculum, and they let you know, and it's like a stoplight, green, yellow, and red. So we are going to be looking at a few different curriculums to see what we can bring into North Kingstown. So this right now is our vision for literacy instruction in North Kingstown that we created. All North Kingstown students will become critical thinkers, readers, and writers on or beyond grade level. Through ongoing and embedded professional learning, teachers will be able to implement a guaranteed and viable curriculum with integrity. Students and teachers will engage with high-quality materials that focus on text complexity, learning that is grounded in evidence from text, and building knowledge to be college and career ready. And that's all students, not just females, males as well. High-quality materials must be aligned to the standards and shifts, which is also vertically aligned and includes scaffolding materials for teachers and students in order to close the gap among all subgroups. So we're very serious about teaching and learning in North Kingstown. And with that, I thank you for your time. I know it was quite long, but I appreciate it. Any questions?
Thank you, Dr. Mansuri. One point I want to highlight. First of all, I'm very proud of the achievement levels all around North Kingstown. You know, there's going to be some variation. We have a very wealthy southern part of town and a not so wealthy northern part of town. There's going to be differences when those things happen. That's a statewide thing, it's a nationwide thing, and we have to deal with those issues as well. Compared to other districts that have similar demographics to us, North Kingstown does tremendously well, and I'm very proud of the professionals in this district for their hard work and the kinds of results that we got. One more point on DMS, and you mentioned N-score, but I'm not so sure everyone fully understands that point, or the N, meaning the number of students. So in North Kingstown and around the state, if your school has a certain threshold of number of students in a category, that counts for or against your school. If you don't, it does not count for or against your school. So Davisville has a little over 20 students who are ELL. That for them counts as a category. There are a number of schools in North Kingstown that do not meet the threshold for even the number of ELL students in that school, so that does not count. It doesn't even count at all as a subgroup. It's not that all the other schools, ELL students, are knocking it out of the park and they've scored high in that category. That category does not count for the school at all. So in this district, that becomes very apparent at Quidnesset and Davisville Middle School. Those are the schools that deal with ELL population as a subgroup. The other schools do not. So I think that's an important point for people to understand, especially when that is the one subgroup that affected Davisville in this particular instance.
Mm-hmm.
But as Dr. Mansuri said, we have a plan for it. We've already hired additional staff, and you know, we see improvements coming along. So.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, so we got the other one? All right.
One more presentation. Yeah.
This Okay, I'd like to bring up Mr. O'Reilly and maybe Dr. Morris. Would you like to come up too, just to answer some questions since you're involved in this? We're going to be talking about the individual learning plan. Take the show.
Thank you, Dr. Mansuri. So the individual learning plan, we'll kind of go through a little bit about what that is. Something students in middle school and high school work on, so it's mandated for grades 6 through 12. There's a lot of words on a lot of these slides, and I'm not going to read all of them, but I will read this one. This is sort of just the basis of what is an ILP. So the Individual Learning Plan ILP is a student-directed planning and monitoring tool that customizes learning opportunities throughout a student's secondary school experience. Both the 2016 Secondary School Regulations and the state's Career Readiness Action Plan, Prepare RI, identify the ILP as the backbone of personalization and relevance of a student's education. The ILP is the cornerstone of course choice, pathway planning, and student goal setting. So sort of a baseline statement. When when looking at the IOP, there's really three main areas that they work on. So it's the academic, the career, and social domains. Those are where the standards kind of lie. And as students kind of work throughout grades 6 through 12, the pieces that they're working on are not only the ILP curriculum, but it's that process that they're working on with the guidance counselors. And it starts in grade 6 and it extends all the way through high school. And of course, it involves multiple stakeholders. I know at the middle level, it's really the guidance counselors working with the students on that. But teachers, mentors, support staff, families, parents, they all kind of have a hand in it. And it makes sense when you look at sort of the domain areas. It's sort of all-encompassing for the students, academic, career, and social, so it makes sense that it has lots of different stakeholders involved. So why are we adopting an ILP system program? Because RIDE said that we had to. That's an easy answer, but the better answer is we really needed one. I think every district, and certainly here in North Kingstown, we were completing ILPs in grades 6 through 12, but what RIDE found was there wasn't a standard implementation across schools and districts. I think what was happening was districts were sort of left to their own devices to figure out what they were going to use. Some districts kind of piecing curriculum together. I know for a while we were using the Way to Go RI website as sort of our housing the ILPs. We kind of got away with that in the last couple of years. And our new commissioner said that by 2021 school year, all districts will be required to have a fully implemented ILP program. So with that, RIDE sort of put together a team of professionals, and I think they looked at recommendations. They kind of looked at the ILP and the standards that it addresses, and what they came up with was a list of ILP or RIDE-approved ILP vendors. And I think it was at least 4. Were there more than those 4? So it was 4 total vendors that we could kind of choose from. And I think it was back second week in September, we sent a team of educators from North Kingstown to a training with RIDE about the ILPs. And it gave some information about the different vendors. It was a 2-day training. I know guidance counselors from both schools went. I think Donna Sweet from the high school also attended for one of the days. But it gave information about the ILP vendors. And then the second day, we had the opportunity to really explore one of those vendors that we thought would be that would meet the needs for North Kingstown. So we're going to kind of go through and talk more about that vendor, and that's the one that we're hopefully going to be choosing. So sort of out of that work that RIDE did and looking at the ILPs, they had some technology requirements that they wanted the vendors to have. So obviously making sure that it's web-based, allowing different access and views for all the different stakeholders that we mentioned. So whether it's students, guidance counselors, school staff, or parents or families, they all sort of have logins and they can kind of view things. Usage reports, the ability to retain and transition data between schools and districts. I think that was a big one. For me, coming from a different district just a few years ago, I really don't know how, if a student transferred districts, you'd be able to transfer that data unless it was just something included in the student's file. So that was a big piece for the requirements for RIDE. Same thing, transitioning just within a district. So a student starting at middle school and kind of doing all this work, how are we making sure that all that information is getting passed on to the high school, that it's continuing, that there's sort of a nice flow to all of that. Ability to document and store students' reflections. So these are some of the technology requirements that RIDE put in place for whatever vendor we ended up choosing. And the next couple slides have a lot of recommended capabilities. I think certain vendors that we looked at might include all of these, but not all of them. That second bullet there, opportunity for students to review past course history, including grades earned. For us, we have Aspen, we have our student information system that has all of that information, so I don't think it was vital or necessary that our ILP system contained all of that. But again, these are just some of the recommended capabilities that the vendors might have had. And I think for a lot of this, we have other avenues that we can kind of touch upon with these, so it wasn't necessarily necessary that we include it in our ILP vendor. So the one that we ended up choosing out of the 4 is called Xello, Xello. And our guidance counselors kind of working both at the middle schools and the high school, going to that training and looking through the resources, felt like Xello sort of provided us with kind of what we needed for our students here in North Kingstown. So the curriculum, the resources it provided, technical support within the program. There's professional development opportunities, whether it's webinars that our staff can attend or view, or site-based training for our staff on how to use this program with our students. And I think there's a video coming up, which gives just a brief little overview of what Cello offers.
An engaged student is a successful student. It's as simple as that. You've got some kids saying, I know where I'm going, just show me how to get there. And then you have students who don't think there's anywhere for them to go. You have to be able to support both of those students and everybody in between. Get them to take a real look at themselves and see what that means for their future. When you say to students, to any student, your life is not a one-size-fits-all thing. Let's take a look at who you are and how you learn and what interests you and figure out where that can take you. And let's map out how you can get there. You're giving these kids a real reason to care. They see just how much possibility is out there. That's when the switch flips and a student realizes they have a hand in their own destiny. And that changes how a student's going to view school and learning and their whole story. There is a difference in test scores, in attendance. It's this positive culture around academics. Proof you can point to and say, these kids have the confidence to tackle the next step, whatever that might be. What happens when students are investing in themselves, it's remarkable.
So sort of a brief overview of kind of what Zello is, and I think that speaks to really the ILP in general, sort of guiding students on a pathway, for post-secondary success. So, in terms of Zello, we were able to get a couple quotes working with their representatives in terms of what it costs. So this first slide, this is a 6-month prorated quote, I believe.
Yep, from January to June, end of June.
Yeah, so this is if we did want to start with this program after the new year. This would be from January till the end of this school year, so June 2020. And this is based on the number of students at the high school, excluding the seniors, I believe. And it's including all students at both middle schools, so Davisville and Wickford. So the total cost there, just to start the program for this second half of the year, would be about $4,400. And then the next slide that we have is our 12-month cost, and I believe this one is if we start it for next school year. So if we're aiming for the 2021 school year, that's starting July 1 through June 30th of 2021. The total cost would be $6,910. And that does account for still the students that we're having here at both middle schools, but it's covering all students at the high school, so including seniors moving forward. We just wouldn't be including them for this next year. So slight difference in the cost there, but 6 and 12-month quotes. I think that was it. We did have some information from some of the other vendors.
They're all more expensive.
Yes. Some significantly.
We thought we'd take the Toyota.
I mean, we can show you Naviance, which is an initial cost of $20,084, but yeah, I think Zello would certainly hit all of our needs and be a more cost-effective option for North Kingstown.
Just two quick questions, just on the dollars and cents of it. So there's no commitment at this point beyond the 6 months and the 1 year if we approve that. It's not like a long-term contract or anything.
No, we're looking for just the 1.5 years.
And
the
then-
rest of this year and then the year after.
My other question would be, if it turns out that this is a product that we're definitely going to be continuing with, do you know if they have any discounts if you were to commit to 2 or 3 or something like that? Years?
They have a 3-year, but they weren't talking any discounts yet. I think they're right now. They have the state of Rhode Island, and so they haven't really talked about discounts. But I can certainly talk to them.
Okay. And if it turns, after we've used it, if it turns out it's something you definitely, are happy with, and if we're able to get a discount for committing to 2 years, for example.
Yes. Okay.
Going forward.
I'll take a look at that. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions in the presentation?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Had a lot, so thankfully a lot of them were answered. So I won't keep everyone here too long. But a couple questions on the integration. So I'm not quite sure we fully answered. So like if Jamestown has a different system, right? One of the other 3 vendors, they're 8th graders when they come to 9th grade. how seamless is that going to be? In other words, do their ninth graders essentially have to recreate in Zello, or is it gonna be a seamless transition from their system into Zello? That was one of the parameters. I'm just not sort of sold yet that that's gonna happen.
The whole idea is for, no matter what system a town is using, it should speak a common language so that one can import to the other.
And they'll do it through our Aspen at night. So the Jamestown kids will be in North Kingstown High School, and they'll already be in, so that'll populate, it'll pre-populate. Now, if there's something specific, like they wrote something in a little box about like maybe a goal, that was free writing and not something that you can see, I'm not sure about that. We'd have to get into it, and that's why we need, the first half of the next half of the year to take a look at where it is. I don't think anybody knows that right now.
So will it be single sign-on?
Yes.
So if parents go in, not only will they see Aspen, but they'll see their kids' Zello, so.
They've told us it has the capability of single sign-on, and it will articulate with Aspen.
Okay, because I think as much as for our students, we're gonna need to educate our parents, because they may wanna know, like, oh, they've been doing all this work and it says they wanna be a civil engineer. That might be something the parent wants to know, because, right, I think it's also a cultural change with parents to say, this is much more career or college planning that's going on now online. So it's a tool that I think parents have to be able to see as well as their child, works through these different checklists. My only final question is, and we dump all this to the state, right? Our data? The state's gonna get 100,000 kids, Zellos or Naviances or XAP. I'm waiting to figure out what the state's gonna do with 100,000 kids' data, other than going, oh, we have data. Could be a great tool for the state to help shape workforce planning. I just, again, I'm not confident, other than mandating it, the state has thought about how they can use it effectively, but I guess we'll see.
I think one of the major helps for us is going to be that the ILPs can follow the students seamlessly from middle through school through high school. There were some years we used to get the files in boxes, and we'd get 3 cartons of, folders from the middle school, and then you're thinking, what do we do with this? Now you have to pull it apart and try to integrate it with what they're doing at the high school, and this will be a flow for the students, and they can keep track over time. And career goals might change as they do career inventories and those activities there's a curriculum to the activities that they do. And so as they follow that pathway, they can track what courses they're choosing to take with the recommended courses or the recommended things that they're being told to do to pursue certain careers that they're testing well in.
So will students get a chance to discuss any of their results with someone like a guidance counselor?
Yes, it's part of a curriculum that the guidance counselors implement. So some of you might remember doing career inventories with the guidance counselors coming in and working with an English class. And students went in and they did Choices 360 or one of the other ones, Way to Go Rhode Island. And then it would feed the student back results. So your interests suggest that you might be a great teacher or an architect or an engineer. And then it would suggest to students courses that would be needed to prepare for those careers. So it should be a cyclical thing. Kids keep revisiting and then the guidance counselors talk to them. But now with this, it has the opportunity to feed into a system that can connect them with colleges who offer that major and talk to them about what requirements, GPAs and what other kind of requirements that college uses to decide who gets in and who does not. So it's a lot more informative for the students overall.
I don't know if I'm misremembering, but I don't recall ever talking to my guidance counselor about any of these results. From past.
It wasn't part of a curriculum before. It was an activity, and it would go into your ILP, and it sort of was, then you do what you need to do
we did
with
it
it.
through College Board just the other day.
Yeah.
So they had us log onto the College Board website and take the survey.
Right.
So I'm guessing there's a follow-up meeting sometime this year scheduled?
Yeah. There's actual curriculum that goes with this, and it's not just a series of activities that you kind of accomplish.
Okay.
This is a systematic kind of way of leading students through that process.
Just going back to the Jamestown question, do you guys, this just talks to coordination. This seems like a great opportunity for someone just to pick up the phone and call Dr. Duva at Jamestown and say, where are you going with this system? What are you guys thinking about? Versus waiting to see what happens. And who knows, maybe, that just, I can certainly ask him.
Jamestown has 360. We did talk about it. They have 360,
Okay.
but he just said he just used it because of the way to go to Rhode Island, actually, what you're talking about, Barbara.
Okay.
So, we will be working with them, and then I wanna say you said that Narragansett had Zello as well.
Narragansett.
So Narragansett
That's
and
where everyone's going
Kingstown.
now. That's a
Zello.
joke.
There's an incentive for Jamestown.
Theoretically, though, these systems are supposed to speak to each other.
Right, no, you said
So if we
that.
had career
yeah.
technical students come in that Warwick might be using Navient, we
Right.
should still be able to import their ILPs to our system.
In fact, Zello's like $1 cheaper, so look at shave a few dollars off when we go to renew.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dr. J?
So under recognition, I just want to express my thanks. A lot of people have sent me well wishes on social media. This past week I went to the national dinner for the state superintendents of the year. A lot of people thought I won the national superintendent of the year. I did not win that. But it really has been a major highlight of my career, and I'm really grateful. I'm especially grateful to be in this great district, to work with great school committees and outstanding, dedicated professionals all the way through. And especially shout out to my wife. It was really nice to share that event with her. She is as deserving as of anyone for that kind of attention. So thank you all.
Congratulations again. Okay, so next item on our agenda are...
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Are we confirming the sports and other things?
We're going to do that in December.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't want to think we ignored them.
No, we're not
Certainly
ignoring
a lot of
sports
fall,
accomplishments.
athletic
There's
and
a ton of
academic
them.
achievements.
Right, so we're lining them up, and we're already running kind of long tonight, so we're going to make sure we do a comprehensive list in December.
Next item on our agenda are citizens' comments. Anyone wanted to speak who didn't sign up? So moving on to routine items, if I could ask for a motion to seal the executive session minutes of this evening. I have a motion from Ms. Hoskins, second Mr. Jones. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. And I can disclose that no votes were taken in this evening's executive session. On the consent agenda, I'm going to exempt item D3. Any other members have
Yes, I want to exempt C3.
C3? Any others? Okay, hearing none, if I could have a motion to approve the non-exempted consent agenda items. A motion from Ms. Hoskins.
Second.
Second from Ms. Hildebrand. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda passes unanimously. First item that was exempted, Mr. Jones, you have that one, is C3.
I do. I will make a motion to approve item C3.
A motion to approve C3 from Mr. Jones. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Ms. Hildebrand.
Thank you.
Discussion.
Yes. My question was, I know, well, obviously the D building is considered a school thing. I think would share some functionality with the town, or the town use of D building, so I'm wondering if it's just, that's something, since they may or may not benefit, I'm not quite sure, that
yeah.
maybe they should contribute maybe a little,
Actually,
if they
they
benefit
do.
from it?
The town is hooked into us for the internet, so when we lose power in the D building, like we did for those couple of days, they're down like
So
we
the
are.
town hall would be down too.
Yeah, half of the town hall. It's kind of funky the way it's set up. Half of the town hall has a generator, but their internet connection is definitely impacted. So it impacts their accounting function and whatnot. So actually, Dr. Auger and I had reached out to the town manager quite a while back regarding a generator. We were kind of in early talks and about, sharing in the cost of that. I recently reached out to him again a couple of weeks ago, but have not heard back from him. I think the last time the D building was out, normally everybody's out when we have those power outages, so not that it doesn't matter, but it doesn't matter. This
Get your
last
computer
time
on, you don't
was
notice.
so
Right.
strange. The D building was out, but we had power in other locations, so we do think it's important to move forward, but I am pending hearing back from Mr. Mollis on his appetite for sharing in the cost, because not long ago, I had thought they were actually going to separate and break away and not have that, their internet attached to the D building, but he had mentioned they'd like to have it for redundancy, which makes a lot of sense, but it would be nice if we could share in the cost. So I'll make sure that Dr. J and I stay on top of that.
Thank you.
Any other comments? If not, we have a motion and a second, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. I exempted item D3, that's just we have 2 ads, so in your packet you have the other names, so there are 2 additional individuals. Leonard Paliza, assistant girls basketball coach, and for DMS, Joseph Kramer, assistant wrestling coach. So I'm going to ask for a motion to approve item D3 with those 2 additional names. I have a motion from Ms. Hoskins.
Second.
Second from Mr. Jones. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Next, so we've reached the end of the consent agenda. We have appointment of a school committee member for negotiations with the North Kingstown Bus Contractors Association. That contract is up for renegotiation. Mr. Jones, is that something you're
I
interested in?
will gladly volunteer.
Okay. We don't really need, I don't think, 2 people, so unless somebody really wanted to assist him, I don't see anyone jumping up and down. Okay, so Mr. Jones, we'll give that to you. If I could, I'll make the motion. Motion to appoint Mr. Jones to be our representative to participate in the negotiations with the North Kingston Bus Contractors Association on their contract.
Second.
I have a second from Ms. Hildebrand. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. And you can report back as needed. Next is item F, the school committee approval of the ONR grant application for North Kingston High School Science. Any quick comments on that one?
This is almost a follow-up. You might have recalled last school committee, we had a $20,000 grant for our chemistry teachers. Rich Sweetman and Susan Erickson, who's actually, well, she was here, I don't know if she's here anymore. She's okay. And then follow-up to that, we got some emails from the East Bay Collaborative talking about an opportunity for other science areas. So Mr. Tom Dorn and Mr. James Bruno have filled that out and have sent it in. It's a $10,000 science for biology, things like that. And so this time we put it on to the school committee prior to receiving anything. So that's where that is, and they'd be getting, again, they have like 120 licenses for the students and online curriculum. It's really a win-win. What the school would have to pay for would be for the 3 days that they're both out getting training, substitutes.
So if I could have a motion to approve item F.
So moved.
A motion from Ms. Hoskins.
Second.
Second from Ms. Hildebrand. Any discussion?
So this is just the application that they're submitting. It hasn't
But if they
been
get it,
granted
we would accept it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Item G, this is a resolution that was in your packet. We've had many discussions on the impact that the former commissioner's decision regarding school field trip funding has had within our district. This is a resolution to be sent to our General Assembly representatives as well as the governor and other entities that are involved with a suggested change to the Rhode Island state law that is essentially the root of the problem, because the commissioner was simply interpreting a law that's kind of been there forever but that no one had really asked about before. And what it would do is it would essentially say that we would be allowed to ask for funding from parents, provided that in the event that parents weren't able to afford the trip, that alternate sources of funding was provided, which I think is getting at the the heart of what everyone was looking for in that decision, which is that we understand that no child should be missing out on these educational opportunities that the field trips provide. But at the same time, it seems kind of crazy that the district can't simply say, if you can contribute $20 for your kid to go, that's what the cost per kid would be, and then it allows us to hopefully, deal with a much smaller gap that we need to make up, either through help from PTOs, outside organizations, or what have you. So that's the idea behind this one. So if I gotta get a motion to approve item G,
So moved.
a motion?
Second.
We'll give it to Mr. Mather. Any further discussion?
So Amy sent us one from another school district.
That
Just this
they,
week.
right, that we got in correspondence.
Language is the same.
It's not
I
exactly
tried
the
to
same,
compare
yeah,
them,
no,
but-
I kind of tweaked it a little bit.
Okay.
And just so you know, the things that I was looking at, there are a number of districts that have passed resolutions that are very similar.
Right.
I had a couple concerns about some, and some didn't apply as much in North Kingstown. I wanna make sure that it's clear that it applies not just to field trips, but, other types of events, like, band trips and things like that. We don't want a change to be so narrow that it only applies to field trips, and then we have to figure out what the heck is a field trip and what isn't, right? So we wanted to have it a little broader. And I wanted to also make it clear, one of the other districts' language said that, you could ask for donations provided the district that the district paid for any student who couldn't afford it. I wanted to make it clear that it could be the district or another organization, right? Because the way the other town had worded it, theoretically, a PTO couldn't make up the difference, only the district could. And I wanted to make it clear that, the point, it's not where the money's coming from, it's that, we're letting the kid go. So those are mainly the tweaks that I had. And I think another district had more of an issue with the potential issue with AP funding, but we don't require AP test funding, but we don't require our students to take the AP test as part of the class, so it wasn't as applicable here. So those are the differences with what we've seen from some other towns.
Yep.
Clearly, it's gonna be up to the General Assembly to decide what they wanna do. I've already, just as I bump into, which I tend to do, our General Assembly delegation, I've mentioned that this was something that we were going to consider, we're going to send their way, and Senator Valverde, I know, had actually reached out to me to ask if this was something that, we were going to be taking up. So they're aware of it, and I'm hoping that in this legislative session come January, that maybe we can get some movement that might make it a lot more manageable for us, so.
Okay.
Any other discussion? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. And then, Ms. Healy, if you could just make sure that when I sign it, we'll get that circulated to the appropriate people. Next, unfinished business, we have the 2018-19 school budget. Mrs. King, anything to
I
report?
do not have anything, no.
And 19-20 budget?
Nope.
CIP, existing bond and future bond?
Just thank you to Jim Grundy, who's the chair of our building committee. He attended the Asset Management Committee meeting last Thursday. That's the one that we have attendance at once a year when the Asset Management Committee looks at capital projects in anticipation of sending a recommendation to the town council for both town projects, capital projects, and school projects. Mr. Grundy spent an hour and a half, 2 hours with the committee answering questions, and we really appreciate his time and look forward to the recommendation that the Asset Management Committee will present to the town council.
Mary, do you know when they plan to do it? Do they do that as a normal, just an agenda item of the town council meeting, or?
I think they do. I think they do it different every year, but it's supposed to be around the January timeframe. And I think I've seen some years where the town council takes their report and files it, and sometimes where they actually do a presentation. So I think it's been different every year.
In case we can highlight it, in case, I don't know, anyone in the audience wants to go to that meeting and emphasize some of our things, like we want to rehab the auditorium and reimagine our school libraries and some of those things that, we need to start putting money away to do.
The idea of being save rather than borrow, that's the key here. We
Yes.
tend to use bond financing for those types of things, but that's not the only way that it can be done. With a little bit of long-term planning, it doesn't have to be done that way. Next, we have a series of policies. I think it's just easier that we can do them one at a time. So if I could get a motion to approve item D1, which is the revision to policy IKA for the grading policy.
So moved.
A motion from Ms. Hoskins
A second.
and a second from Ms. Hildebrand. Any discussion on that one?
I don't have one per se, I would just ask the superintendent to, or maybe for the policy committee to think about, not quite as detailed, but maybe a sort of philosophical grading policy also at the elementary and middle school thought, for something down the road.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Next is item D2, which is a revision to the building use policy. I think there's some tweaks we might want to make to that. Do you want to, well, before we make a motion, let's talk
I
about.
don't wanna tweak it.
Yeah, so let me just bring it up.
So in the wording, just adding cafeterias as well as classrooms.
Okay.
And also changing the scoutmaster having to be in attendance to a troop leader.
Okay.
So, and just, so let's start with a motion to approve item D2 with those two amendments. And if, Ms. Healy, you follow that? So I think that,
I'll have to go back.
yeah,
and
so it just would be to
Marian's-
add,
I can take care of it.
Okay.
I put the policy
yeah,
on
the
the
allowed
agenda.
space would be to include
Yep.
the cafeteria, and then just, it's just a wording
Right.
change, because it's not always called the scoutmaster.
Right.
So,
the only other room that they use, cafeteria,
In classrooms.
in classrooms, no gyms or?
and so, do we have a motion to approve that as amended? A motion, do I have a second?
Second.
A second from Mr. Mather. Just further discussion. I just want to make the point, what we're doing here is, we heard the concerns that the scouts have come to us with, and we want to recognize that they are a pretty unique organization within the town, and as a recognition of that, we're going to amend our policy to give you the ability to use those classrooms and cafeteria spaces without the normal fees to it. So, any other discussion?
No, I just want to thank the administration for looking into
Provided they follow the building use policy, or the building use, process and all
Right.
that.
Yep, still,
Perfect.
they know the drill.
That's right.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Next, approval, as we clean up some policies, if I can have a motion to approve item D3, which is the deletion of policy GCF.
So
Motion
Second.
and a second. Any discussion?
I think it's just important to note that this is really because of the movement to more site-based management control. And so I'm heartened to see, because I don't know if we'll talk about it later on, where we have the superintendent providing us all the school improvement teams, that they look very robust, that each school seems to have a very, well thought out school improvement, because that's essentially the groups that are supposed to advise the building administrators as we move to more site-based management in terms of personnel control. So I think it's important to know we're deleting this because of state law, and also it starts migrating more control down to the building level, which means we have less stuff to improve. So
We do, which I'm going to mention as we get to the next one. Do we have a motion and a second? Sorry, I lost my track there.
Yes.
Yes, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. I'm just going to point out, it does not mean that we are no longer going to be recruiting, supporting, and retaining
Yes,
highly
right.
effective staff.
Thank you.
Done with that.
So item D4 is the approval of policy GCF.2. If I can have a motion to approve.
First read?
First read, sorry, right, so it's a motion to approve a first reading. It's a new policy, so we will do it twice. So I'm actually going to make a point. When we do this motion, I want to make it clear that we're approving this policy, and I don't know the exact date, so I'm going to leave it kind of vague, but we can figure this out. That this policy will be effective when the change to the general law becomes effective. And I'll go over that once we get into discussion. So we'll approve our first reading of this policy with the understanding it will be effective upon the effective date of Rhode Island General Law 16-211 as amended. So if I could have a motion. I have a tie there. We'll give it to Ms. Hildebrand, and a second. Second from Ms. Hoskins. So discussion, just to explain what we're doing here. So in the last legislative session, as part of a move to just sort of, frankly, in a response to some of the issues that have been being dealt with in the Providence School Department, the General Assembly sort of looked at the entire process as to how staff are hired within all the school districts in the state. One of the current obligations of the school committee is to provide advice and consent and approval of every staff member that's recommended for hire by the superintendent. That authority has been removed from the school committee by the General Assembly, which means that once this comes into effect, the school committee no longer has the advice and consent that we had before. And the law specifies that in some situations, teachers are hired at the recommendation of the building principal, other at the recommendation of the superintendent. This policy just goes through what our procedures are going to be going forward due to that change in legislation. And that's why I just wanted to make the point that this new policy wouldn't come into effect until the legislation comes into effect, which I believe is in January.
It
right?
is.
Yeah,
So the first meeting in January, you will not see any personnel items unless it is an employee contract, and I don't mean a collective bargaining agreement, which you will see those, but I mean a contract like we have for administration. Those you must approve.
So hiring decisions, we won't be approving. What about resignations?
That's different.
retirements? Those are different.
That's different. But so when you look at our consent agenda and you
Yeah.
see this list, and it's frankly everything, which in my soapbox moment here for a moment, I understand why, from a policy standpoint, the teaching staff might be changing. I disagree, and I'm going to single your position out, not for you, but I do think that you don't have an educational component to a position like Mrs. King's or some other administrative positions that we used to approve, that we no longer have approval over, and I think that's completely outside of what they're trying to accomplish, but got sucked into this, which I personally,
But administrative positions have contracts, which you have to.
We have to approve the
So there's still an
contract.
oversight there.
Right, but, and this is splitting hairs, but we no longer have the ability to say no to the person. We can simply say, no, we won't. Yeah,
You don't approve a contract.
Then we know the person, and then you get an industry. True, but it's different, so, I think they could have worded it a little differently and accomplished the same thing, but that's just.
Now, can we go back to the resignations thing? Now, terminations, you still have to approve, which,
Yep,
I get it, but you didn't hire them, but whatever. Resignations, I hadn't planned on putting those on here either, because really, what are you approving with a
Right, what if you
resignation?
say
You're
no
gonna
to
tell
their
somebody they
resignation?
can't resign?
Yeah, so that's it.
But it's there, it's there right now. I mean, we could say no right now.
Well, which is
right?
silly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's always been silly. And I guess we do need to work through some other details like leave of absence and stuff like that. Because my understanding is that any of the personnel stuff, again, outside of if there's an employee contract, is not coming to you guys, except we did say that quarterly, in reports, we will provide the information to you. So it would be, position, step of the position vacated, not the person's name, but we would have all that information for you, just like as an FYI in reports quarterly. So maybe we need to work out a few more of those details.
This policy does help with some of the logistics
Timing,
of
yeah,
hiring.
it
So
does.
those late August hires that we want to take care of, but there isn't a school committee meeting for a couple of weeks, or even just before a season begins. Once that comes through my signature, I guess at this point, that person is hired and may not have to wait a couple of weeks before a school committee meeting happens before that coach can join a team and start to work with the team. So.
And we
But
still-
all of their employment paperwork has to be before
Yes,
they
that's
start as
all
well.
that still
So
has
that,
to
that is not
Everything
going
else
to
is-
change.
HR components will also be there.
Yeah.
And we do have the right to direct the superintendent with respect to, broad brush things like, how we wanted to, what we wanted to be looking at in general and salaries and things like that. We still have, budgetary oversight, but, so that's what this is all about. So, we had a motion and a second, correct, Ms. Healy? I tried to write it down and then I forget. So, any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Next is another first read, again, so we're just approving for the first time, approval of policy GCRD regarding tutoring services by staff. I could have a motion to approve. I have a motion from Ms. Hildebrand, do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Ms. Hoskins. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passes the first read. We'll vote on those again, both of them, at our next meeting. Next in your packets were the fiscal year 20 current October financial reports. Any questions on those? Special report on the school improvement team plans. Any questions there?
No, I would just, for most of the elementary schools, to dive into your metrics more by, all of them have ELA and math goals for the ELA. Dive into the gender differential.
You've never mentioned that before.
I will. Until the scores change, I will be,
Until the year it flips, and then you can complain about the other way.
I'll be,
Then we've
I'll
reached,
move on to something else.
we've reached the end of our agenda. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Motion from Ms. Haskins, second Ms. Hildebrand. All those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you all for coming.